Sorry. Sorry. All right. All right, Matt White, thank you so much for joining us. This is so spectacular. You are one of our first guests here at the Jazz Sentinel. We're so excited that we are partnering with you to launch our brand and whatnot. So, why don't you take it away by introducing yourself to the audience via what you do, who you are, what you play, and maybe through the lens of your latest record.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Matt White. I am a trumpeter, composer, arranger, orchestrator, teacher, and engineer. And I'm also the professor and chair of jazz studies at the University of South Carolina, where obviously we work together. And my latest project is this record called Matt White's Dolly, which is a reimagining of early Dolly Parton songs. So we took this music. It was all composed by Dolly, songs that were written by her. And I got like on this deep dive on Dolly music, and I kind of picked apart these tunes and we reconstructed them with this band, which is me. I did all the arrangements, and I'm actually playing cornet on the record. And then, of course, Liz Kelly is the vocalist, Tim Fisher on guitar, Demetrius Doctor on organ, and you are playing drums on it.
I am. I am. Wait, so why did you choose the cornet? Tell the good people. Where
Yeah,
did the cornet come from?
it was kind of a dumb idea. So I kind of bought one on a whim. I was like at a brass shop, and they had one on like on consignment, and I always kind of wanted to play one. So I bought it, and I was just kind of messing around with it. It's a weird instrument because it's a real fun instrument to play, but like there's not a lot of use for it in like what we do, right? So it's in most cases, if I was like playing in a big band or playing on a session or even like playing in a traditional jazz group, I'd probably be playing trumpet because that's mostly like what I've spent my time playing. And they're very similar instruments, but there's enough differences that it's a little weird. So one of the reasons I decided to play cornet is because I thought it would be interesting to try to blend it tonally. It's a little darker than a trumpet, so I thought it would be interesting to kind of blend it with the voice, with the guitar, and the organ, and kind of writing in a way in which like I was trying to combine all those different timbres.
Yeah.
So, that was part of it. And then also, it was kind of a dumb challenge to make a debut on something where I wrote all the music, and the music was hard. So when I was writing this record and kind of conceptualizing it, it was at the exact same time I was doing Lowcountry, which is my last record. And I was actually, we recorded these two records like in the same summer, even though this one obviously came out after Lowcountry. And so while Lowcountry was like really focused on, I felt like my role as a composer, even though I was playing trumpet in the ensemble, I was really writing that music to feature Chris Potter, and so I wanted to make sure that everything was kind of front facing with that, and more it was about, the work I was doing as a composer and a producer with Quentin putting all this stuff together. And so with the Dolly project, because I was focusing so much on being composer, I was like, man, I want to like kind of do something that is going to challenge me as a brass instrumentalist, as a trumpet player. And
Mm,
so, playing a new instrument was part of it. Writing arrangements that were really challenging to play, to play accurately. And then also, the fact that one of the big decisions on the Dolly record was to do everything in Dolly's original keys. And so they're guitar keys, which do not lay well on the trumpet. So it's a lot of like C
mhm.
sharp minor and E major and stuff, which like doesn't lay well. So I was like, okay, like I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna like really try to do this on the cornet. And so it was a musical challenge, but I think a lot of times creating those musical challenges makes me more invested in the project.
Gotcha. And I was this the first time that you had played cornet only on a project? Or
Yeah,
had
I
you
mean,
like ex never played it before?
I think the only time I played it was maybe like a gig we had.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So I
Okay.
mean, this was like literally the debut of me playing cornet in public. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Um,
And so when you play, I should know the answer to this, but I don't. When you play this project live, do you play cornet or trumpet? I can't remember.
we did it once at the Charleston Jazz Festival, and I did it on trumpet, and I kind of
Okay.
copped out only because I hadn't been practicing cornet, getting ready for.
Okay. So then that leads to my next question. So like what was the prep like? Your practice, did your practice change prior to this session because of the instrument change?
Yeah, so yes and no. And so I was definitely carving out more practice time on the cornet.
Uh-huh.
So like with my trumpet practice, I was making sure that I was allocating some time for cornet. But really, a lot of what I was doing on cornet was just trying to make sure like my fundamentals were really strong, and like I
Mm.
kind of knew where things were on the instrument. But listening to the record now, like one of the things I like about it, and it's kind of the same way I feel about flugelhorn, which like if people don't know, I hate playing the flugelhorn. But uh, but what was kind of cool about it is because I had not so much familiarity. When I hear it, I feel like I'm soloing a little differently. Because even though I
Mm.
felt like very physically comfortable on it, it's like I'm
Mm.
still kind of figuring out like how I want to play on it. And so for me, I kind of hear me playing, like making different choices than maybe I would have made if I was playing trumpet.
Well, and that's so interesting you say that because I was curious if you would go ahead and talk a little bit about how you went about arranging for this project versus the Low Country project. You just touched on it a little bit, really writing for yourself versus a Chris Potter or someone else to be featured. Number one, and number two, when you were writing, did you already know you were going to play the cornet, or was that a kind of a fluke afterwards? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think I was about maybe halfway through writing the project when I decided I wanted to play cornet.
Okay,
Um,
so this was not like,
yeah,
oh, okay, wow, that's
Yeah, and
crazy.
it's funny because every project's like a little different, and so
Hmm.
I do know for this project, which was even though with Low Country, like I knew that Quentin was going to play drums, and I
Hmm.
knew I wanted Chris Potter to be the soloist, but even like the fact that we used strings on it, that was something I went back and reorchestrated actually after I had written like a lot of the bones of the actual
Oh,
music.
okay. Yeah. So
And
you
so that
it didn't
was
initially start as a string project. You
right,
added
right,
it. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
and
gonna
that was
change how you write, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's like, if you write for a big band, like you know what you're writing for a big band, right? And so that
Hmm.
was like I was so on the fence about what the project was going to be. I was just like I just need to write the music and I'll do the orchestration as like a completely different thing. But for this project, like once I started doing the writing, like I knew exactly who I wanted to play on it. And so
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Okay.
that's how I made a lot of those decisions is like, okay, like I know like Tim and I have been friends forever and I know I can like torment him with like really difficult guitar parts.
Guitar
So I'm
stuff.
like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna, yeah, I'm just gonna write really hard, guitar music. And like, I know Liz really well because she's a former student of mine. And so I knew that like she would really be able to kind of toe the line between really nailing Dolly's lyrics and like the vocal shape, but also feel comfortable with what we were doing to kind of deconstruct everything around that because she's just a great musician. Um,
Hmm.
and of course, like Demetrius, I've known Demetrius forever. He's like kind of a musical secret weapon because he's adept at everything. And so again, I was like, okay, he
Yeah.
can bring church to this. He can bring like, his Gullah background. He's a great jazz musician. He's got like all this stuff in his bag. And so I knew that he would feel really comfortable with this idea of like blurring the lines and genres. And then, for
Yeah.
you too, is like I trust you so much musically to prepare, but also to orchestrate. And I knew that like, okay, if Colleen's playing drums on this, like I know that she'll orchestrate the arrangements really beautifully, but then I know she'll also like really have an understanding of like how we're trying to combine the country traditions and like those southern folk traditions, and then like when we want to swing, that'll still feel really great too.
Yeah.
It was the first time I kind of thought about it from that perspective.
That's so interesting too, because when I was preparing for that, I got with my mentor in Texas. I was like, Steve, teach me everything you know about every train beat ever. He's like, cool. We did it for like a month.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah, and you
deep
play
dive
so
on
many
train, like
variations. Yeah, and you play so
yeah.
many variations of that beat on the record, which really like ties it together. Yeah, absolutely.
And it was just one of those things like when you had that great modern drummer that was so cool. That review was like so lovely for you. And then they had said that I was like enough country. I was like, yes, I did my job. Okay.
Success. Yeah.
Amazing. That was like my favorite. I was like, yay, that no one else, I don't need anything else anymore. I'm like, I did my homework. Yay.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
like why it's so cool when you are able to collaborate with people with a clear vision of what their project is supposed to be, you know? And
Yeah.
then, but at the same time, being flexible to put a trust in not knowing what's going to happen with those people, right?
Right. And I think that that's the thing you really have to think about when you're writing for a project or you're going in as a producer is like, how much control do you want over everything as like in this case, the arranger and the orchestrator, and how much room are you giving everybody to find their way?
Hmm.
So I think that's really important, which is why one of the reasons, like, we had these kind of really, we had these kind of very through composed arrangements that we were playing, but that's one of the reasons I did those like little 9 to 5 interludes on that, because I was just like, everything on this record is like really controlled. It would be great if we just played something and just let it happen, and just is almost like a mental break from like what we were doing to prepare all the arrangements. And it's been really interesting because like quite a few of the reviews have really honed in on like they love those little interludes, and it was such like, I don't want to say it was a throwaway because I'm really happy with the way that they turned out, but I literally sketched out that arrangement like the day before the recording session. And I was just like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna rehearse it. We're just gonna go in and we're gonna play it and see what happens. And so everything's a first take. It's just like
Yeah.
literally what we did. Yeah.
Well, and I remember being very new. I'd really just met everyone, and so I was like, "Ooh, what does this guy want?" Like so
Yeah.
we just kind of like I'm like, kids, I'm like kind of more like, "Okay, it's your thing. Please tell us what to do." And all of us were kind of like, "Ooh," like, but they ended up great, like we just kind of went, you know, each one is different, and I think that was the guidance you'd give, like, you're the leader, Demetrius, on this one or something. I can't remember, right? I think you did something like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So
You kind of like
yeah.
pinpointed a person, maybe.
Yeah, and what we did is yeah, everybody kind of had like, I would always play the opening to the chorus, the first couple
Mm-hmm.
notes, and then everybody was in a different key center, and then everybody had like a role that they were the leader. So like the first one I led, the second
Yeah.
one Tim led, the last one Demetrius led.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so
Which is kind of
that was
cool
kind of
because that's like how they end too, right? We kind
right.
of let them fizzle out with the person, I think. I don't really remember. It worked out great though.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, okay. Um, but it's neat that you put those in there because yeah, maybe without those interludes, it would have a different flavor, the whole thing, right? The
Sorry, you
record.
cut out for a second. Could you repeat that?
Oh, like without those interludes, maybe the record would have a slightly different taste, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I like that idea of having thinking of like kind of the narrative journey of all these songs, and then also that kind of narrative going through the music, right? And so, yeah, I kind of looked at these as like these only need to be 2 minutes long, and they should almost be like little breaks, like fun little breaks from like these heavy
Hmm.
songs, that were,
Yeah.
but these heavy topics that we're playing these arrangements to.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's also like for the listener, it's kind of great because they're like, whoa, like this song is about, this woman's pregnant and the guy's never coming back.
Right.
Oh God, and then that's like pretty awesome. So when you were and I know that a lot of people have asked you about why did you combine, sorry, I'll edit that out. Why, where did this come from? This idea of like you're already now a decade at least. I don't want to say decades. I don't want to age you. A research on Gullah Geechee culture, community
Yeah.
music, right? Combined with the most prolific songstress of ever of America, maybe. Um, and I know you were there's a very specific tune that you were looking at on YouTube. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then what I want to get into more is, had you noticed this idea of the 3-3-2 rhythm before with her, or is it a country thing? Because I noticed it like on some of her other like
Mhm.
70s, 80s tracks where I'm like, oh my God, big four. Like this is so swinging, but it's also like very country, but it's also very New Orleans. Like there's so many things that are intertwined. So I'm curious that like once you had seen this video, were you like thinking, oh my God, this other tune that she does is like that? Or did you kind of go on a research poll, like track?
Yeah, so I think maybe to answer that part first, like it was, I kind of knew of Dolly as like the cultural icon. So like the hits, so
Hmm.
obviously like 9 to 5 and Jolene and what's the one she does with Kenny Rogers, Islands in the
Oh,
Stream. Like,
Islands in the Stream. Love
yeah,
it.
so it's
So
like
great.
I knew
Yeah.
about that stuff, and I knew like about her philanthropy, and how she's just like
Hmm.
an amazing human being. But the tune that I checked out was I was doing a deep dive one night, checking out Bessie Jones, like who's a real famous Gullah singer and tambourinist, and like I got the YouTube suggestions which said Dolly Parton performs the bridge, and it was a solo performance on the Porter Wagner show.
Hmm.
And he introduces her by saying like, "Well, here's Miss Dolly Parton, and she's about to play the prettiest little song you've ever heard." And
Yeah,
so she
this is
comes out and she
so
plays the
him.
bridge, right? And it's a story, and it's the first tune that I did for the record that I arranged and kind of deconstructed. But it's the story of this woman who has this love affair, and all these important moments happen on this bridge. And kind of the twist at the end is that she's standing on the edge of the bridge, and she's been abandoned, and she's pregnant, and she's going to jump off the bridge.
Mhm.
And so she performed this on the Porter Wagner show in like 19, I think it was like 1967 or maybe like a year or two later than that. So I'm like really floored by this. I was like, I can't believe she did this. And like for him to introduce it as the prettiest little song you've ever heard, there's just, like all these like fire alarms are going off in my head about like creativity and what's going on here. But yeah, so she's strumming like the 3-3-2 the whole time, which is the
Mhm.
ground rhythm that we talk about in shouting songs in the Gullah tradition that still happen at Praise House services. And so really what that did is that made me go on a deep dive of her records. And so really starting with the early stuff because I had no like the Fairest of the Mall,
Mhm.
all those early records that, were really featuring her songwriting, but songs that I didn't know. And so,
Mhm.
after I had done a little bit of research on it and I had written this arrangement of the bridge, I reached out to Liz and told her like, "Hey, I've got this idea." Because I think, obviously if you're going to do a Dolly record, the vocalist is the first person you need to
Yeah.
kind of get on board.
Oof.
And
Mhm.
so I told her I want to do this project. Like, what do you think? She's like, I'm super into it. And I was like, could you check out these records? And we kind of like narrowed it down to a couple records and tell me
Mhm.
the songs that really speak to you. Um, and
Okay.
so, and so it was kind of a collaborative project of us, like a process at that point of us just picking tunes that, had a narrative that we thought was really powerful. And then maybe had musical things that were interesting. And so some of those were the 3-3-2, but some of them were things just like phrasing, that was really interesting or like kind of
Okay.
weird.
So there
Like,
were different themes. Okay, got it. Nice.
yeah, so
Yeah.
like, on like My Blue Tears, when our
Mhm.
arrangement of that, those phrases in the verse are 7-bar phrases, right?
Annoying. So
Right.
annoying.
So weird, right? But she does that on the original.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
great, but it's like you're not sight reading this. Like, no way.
Right. And it's one of
Like,
those things too where the phrasing is really in service of the lyrics, right? And so you don't
Mhm.
notice as much when those lyrics are happening, but when we're soloing on it, you can feel it, right? That you're
Yeah.
always, oh, wait, we're back, we're
You're
back
like
at the spot.
6, 7. Ah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like Little Bird was the same way as like there's
Yeah,
that
Little
intro
Bird.
that's 3-4 and it goes to a bar of 5-8, and it's like we weren't being super hip. Like that's literally what they do on the record.
That's so cool. That's so
And
cool.
so yeah, so it was so there was kind of this like selection process of, okay, we want these songs narratively that have a story. And, a lot of times they were stories about things that she obviously dealt with in her background, but these are things that are universal to people that make art, right?
Hmm.
And so this is like things like what it's like to deal with poverty, what it's like to deal with sexism, and so, that stuff was really powerful because I thought like, man, this is still stuff that holds up as a narrative, all these years later about these issues people are dealing with, and they're very powerful. And so those were kind of the guiding principles, like musically and content wise, of how we selected the tunes for the record.
That's great. And then did you pick more than you actually recorded?
Yeah, so
Or
there's a couple others that I had selected and I have like sketches of, but like I just, I was like, well, we'll do those later. And we probably still will do those later at some point. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome because I figure like I mean just as researchers we get so excited about like, oh, and I found another one. Oh, and I found another one. Oh,
Right.
that it's like, oh my God, I have so much material. I gotta like choose here. So
Yeah,
I
and I
figured,
think for me as a
mhm,
writer, that's one of the challenges is like I'm definitely like a person that overwrites and has to like edit everything down. And so
mm,
sometimes like telling yourself to stop is really difficult. Like, okay, this is enough
yeah, of
for
course.
a project. Like now I need to fine tune all this. Like I need to stop, digging into these other tunes.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting to say that because when you're writing for whatever project, how much of your process, how much do you allow for editing? Like, are you one of those people that has, okay, my deadline is October 1st for this big band record or whatever. Are you like done on September 1st and then you're editing for a month? Or is it just like tune by tune? Like, how does your brain work around that editing process for your projects?
Yeah, I think generally, and this isn't always the case, but I think generally speaking, I try to make the editing process different than the like writing process. Because even though I've got like guidelines that I'm always thinking about when I'm writing to kind of keep myself on track, I like going down little rabbit holes, to see where they lead. And so
Mm,
sometimes, I might spend a day like going down this path and have like a page full of stuff that could be
mhm.
related to this. And I might not actually use that on the record.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
generally
Yeah.
speaking, like with my writing or like my whatever like process means, but like what my process is like a lot of times I'm using like maybe 30 to 40% of what I actually wrote on a project. But I like that because I feel like it makes me make decisions about like what is the best material. Where I think when I was younger and I was working on much tighter deadlines, just because that's the way life goes, I felt a lot of times I was making decisions because I had to make a decision.
Yeah. Right. You're
You
like,
know?
I gotta get this in tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like I got to get this
Drop.
done. Like this
Yeah.
works, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now I much
Yeah.
prefer having like an open timeline where it's like I can kind of simmer with this for a little bit. And what I've learned over the years too, for the way that I write, is that when I was younger, I was very much like, oh, I'm going to spend 6 hours writing straight, and I would just be
Mm,
locked in. But now that I'm older and like I got kids and I got responsibilities, like we have our jobs, like I feel like I'm much more comfortable where like I can write like for an hour and then
mhm.
I can kind of walk away and have it in the back of my mind and be thinking about other solutions, right? And so that way,
Yeah.
when I come back, it's like, okay, maybe this will work, or I kind of thought about this. And I think if I'd been sitting there for that long time, I wouldn't have gotten to the same place.
Well, and fatigue is different at different stages of life too, right? We have so many other things in your head and blah blah blah. You have a different outlook on everything, right? And so it's almost like I feel like this. If you're distracted a little bit, you actually can process more, and then when you come
Sure.
back to it, you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
right, this is what I'm gonna do, boom boom boom, right? So it's interesting as we age, the brain is so able to multitask, even maybe when we're, you know, subconsciously don't even realize it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the hunger to kind of get back to be like, oh, okay, now I got 30 minutes. Let me write.
Right.
It's like
Right.
versus, oh, I got all day. I can lounge and I'll get, like maybe
Yeah.
that's
I
just
think
me
I
too.
think now like I'm much more like I'm always the person now that's like if we have a project coming up, like give me everything now because I don't like feeling rushed.
Yeah, that
And
makes
usually
sense.
when that happens, I actually usually get everything done early.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and then you feel great, right? You're like, yes.
right. It's like completely like off of my plate. I'm like, okay, like it's done and like I feel good about it. It's like I don't feel like,
Right.
oh God, I turned this in the night before and like there's those like those 8 bars that I really don't love. It's something there.
Right. And in those scenarios too, I bet, and you can talk about this, with your recording work too. I bet there are some bosses that are like, "Oh, you're already done? Can I give you something else too?" Right?
Oh, sure.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, actually, I have this idea. Could we try this instead? And it's like, oh yeah, actually, that's really, that's that kind of professionalism is, it goes such a long way, right? And so talking about your recording, your engineering, how does that look for you now? Talk a little bit about, your experience with that and, because you did engineer the entire Dolly record yourself while in the studio, right? And then mixed it and did all that. And so what does your engineer life look like right now?
So yeah, just like as a point of correction, so I set up a lot of the session, but if you remember, Cynthia Kelly, Liz's sister, actually engineered it while we were there.
That's right. Yeah, 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 that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and
That's right.
she mixed the record, and did
Oh,
an
she mixed it. Oh,
incredible.
I thought you mixed it. Oh,
No, she
no.
mixed it. I did a lot of the editing, and like I tend to do that
Ah,
now.
okay,
Is
okay.
like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like if we have like takes or like things that need to
Hmm.
be, adjusted, like I'll do all that. So whoever is mixing it just has to mix it.
Gotcha.
Because I
I
know I've
bet
been.
your editing notes are really great.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah, and it's like I kind of appreciate that now because, as you know, we work with people sometimes where that can be like a chaotic situation, and so like I like
Sure.
the idea of like being able to take care of those various things and stages. But yeah, in terms of my recording background, I mean, I think that it's just to me, it's like just another level of preparation, right? And
Hmm.
so when we did this record, like we did it at Steve Bailey's recording studio at Myrtle Beach, which like I'm very familiar with that room from being friends with Steve, and so I felt very comfortable with the gear, the space, and like all the little quirks that home studio.
Mhm.
Um, and there were many, but So I think the main thing is like just how you would prepare and practicing and like knowing your music and having everything prepared going there. And as a composer, like knowing your scores really well. It's just a matter of planning. And so like I was thinking about where we were going to place things, what kind of microphones we were going to use,
Mm,
setting the templates and like the record in the Pro Tools session like ahead of time. It's just like, and this relates to the composition stuff too, is that I think a lot of times for us to welcome chaos and to be comfortable with chaos, like we have to really prepare really well,
mm, yeah.
right? And so it's like, okay, everything I can possibly prepare to the best of my ability, let me prepare it so that like when something goes wrong or something gets weird, or like even if we want to take like a different like creative choice with something, everything else is in place that we can do that.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. And I think uh just having worked with you in these multiple capacities at this point of like small group, big band, you're running it, you're not. I've seen a lot of tactical ways that you use to work in these environments. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be the head engineer versus someone that maybe comes in later, and how you kind of deal with both of those roles in case people are interested in going this way?
So sometimes like for example, if I'm not the engineer, I might like mix a record or have to do some work on a record later. And so I think like the to be honest, like the biggest thing is being really patient because just how different workflows for record or for composing, people have different workflows for recording. And so a lot of times like I'll go in and I'll see a session or something that somebody sent me and I've got to work on it, and it's like for the way my brain works, it's a disaster.
Oh,
It's like
yeah. Yikes.
things are like labeled and they're like routed very weirdly. And so I think a lot of it is just like patience and being like, okay, I can figure this out. Let me figure this out and like how this is working.
Mm-hmm.
Why they made this choice, like why this thing happened. Like I worked on a project. I'm working on a project now, like that you and I know about, but I probably shouldn't share what it is. But uh, where the first day of the recording, I didn't realize when we were making this record, but the
Mm-hmm.
first day of the recording, the two interfaces that were recording were not time locked. And
Oh,
so a bunch of the tracks are playing at a different time than the other tracks. So
what was
yeah,
that? Why
and
was
so I
that?
opened the session and I'm playing back and I'm like, I'm hearing all this stuff that's like crazy. I'm like, what is happening? So I had to spend like, a couple hours like just figuring out like what happened. And part of it's because I'm not necessarily communicating with the person that recorded it. You're
Oh, yeah,
doing like,
yeah, yeah.
you're doing a lot of guesswork. And so you're going like, okay, like, okay, it looks like this is what happened, and let me see if I can find how many milliseconds were off and which tracks, and let me go ahead and like do those nudges to line them back up, and then I have to cut them together so that they're synced together, and so I can export them to like my mix template. So it's like a whole thing, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, and this is something we tell our students all the time, is like practice prepares you to be able to deal with this kind of stuff.
Mm, yeah. Hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like I have a problem. Why isn't this working? Like, why do I sound
Yeah,
bad on the bridge of this song?
yeah.
Let me come up with a strategy to fix it. So it's like you hear a problem as an engineer and you go, okay, like I think this is what's happening. Let me try to
Hmm.
figure this out and see what I have to do to fix it.
Yeah, and it's so, and that's why, I found it to be important to have you as one of our first, because all of your work is interconnected, right? So your work
Yeah.
as a trumpet artist, your work as an engineer, your work as a teacher, all these things are composer are interconnected in that it's a lot of it seems like it's based on problem solving. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think that like to me the most important things for a musician, or like I think for success as a musician, are like the ability to problem solve. Curiosity, I think, is really important, and like time management, right? And what's interesting is like none of those things are musical skills. But for me, they're all the things that if I think about like whatever like version of success I've had in music, that they were all kind of based on developing those skill sets. And so yeah, I think absolutely, and I think that what's so cool about that is that if you think about it that way, it kind of empowers you to. And so it's not limited to, my role as a trumpet player or my role as a composer or as an engineer. It's like feeling like I can figure stuff out, like has, allowed me to do other things in life that have been helpful.
Yeah, yeah, it's so great too, because as we, have discussed and taught, we always tell kids like your path is different than mine, and that's what's so great, right? There's only one of each of us,
Right.
and how we decide how to use all these skills that we're acquiring or working on or getting better at, is going to inform the paths, maybe multiple, in which we choose to take or whatever, which is pretty exciting. That's why I think music is such a great thing to study, because of that, idea of problem solving. So, um, we have made it to my final question, which I have no idea the answer to this, or if you can share it, or if you want to share it. But maybe talk a little bit about your plans for your next big project or something that you're excited about, maybe coming down the pike, or records that are coming out, and whatever you want to share for people to look forward to after they buy your Dolly record.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now it's I'm always working on something, and so now it's kind of balancing things that I'm doing to help with other people's projects, and then the stuff I'm trying to do for myself. And so I think we can share this, but like we played on a Mike D's big band record that's done. Not the one that just came out; it's a different one that we did, and I just mixed that record in addition to like contributing arrangements and playing in the trumpet section. And so
Hmm.
I'm really excited about that. I'm doing a project, which I can't say what it is, but I'm doing a project for Victor Wooten and Steve Bailey and Greg Bissonette, Bass Extremes right now, which is super cool. And I think it's not going to be what a lot of people expect it's going to be, which is really, really neat. And then I have this one project that's kind of on the back burner that's related to Lowcountry, which is this Songs of Protest, which is taking these Gullah spirituals and shouting songs and hymns. They were really key songs as part of the civil rights movement. These were songs that were kind of disseminated all through the South through these different like
Hmm.
community sings programs. But they pretty much originated in our backyard. And so I've written a bunch of like reimaginings of this music kind of in the vein of Low Country, but I want to do that record as a big band with a bunch of guest artists. And so like right
That's
now
great.
I'm doing the sketches for that as we kind of planned for to financially be able to do that. And then the other thing, which is like not something I was expecting to do this summer, but I haven't written like my original music in a while. Like I've done little bits and pieces here, like when we have
Hmm.
faculty concerts and stuff. And so, I'm trying to think about writing original instrumental music just because maybe I've got a different perspective on it than, when I was like writing for full projects like I did before I got involved in like kind of this Southern folk music, whole concept. And so
Yeah.
trying to do all those and, not putting like a lot of judgment on that. Like I don't know what it's going to be. I know I want you to play on it, but like
Oh,
I was
thanks.
like, well, maybe, it'll be a small ensemble. And then I had like
Yeah.
listen to a lot of string quartet music again. So I'm like, maybe if it's like rhythm section and me and a string quartet. So yeah, so I'm just
Oh,
like
nice.
messing around with some stuff and just seeing what happens.
That's awesome. And for people that maybe haven't, checked out your music just yet, where can they find your stuff? Where can they find you? Which records, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so I mean, always go to my website. It's probably the easiest way, which is mattwhitejazz.com. That's links to all my like streaming stuff and all the social media. Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple records out that were pretty early in my career, where it's mostly like my original instrumental music, and then of course Low Country, which came out a couple years ago, which was funded by my Guggenheim Fellowship in Music Composition. The Dolly record, which just came back in May, which seems to be getting a lot of like fantastic feedback, and I'm super duper proud of it. And then of course like the other projects that like I get to play on either as a trumpet player or like contributing in some other way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Matt White from the University of South Carolina, for joining us. This is really, really fantastic. And, we can't wait to listen to the record, and support you. And again, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Stop.